Here we have the second part of the Protestant Reformation notes, and we are picking up with John Calvin. The first part went through causes of the Protestant Reformation and Martin Luther and early protesters. But here's John Calvin. So John Calvin is originally born in France. He moves to Switzerland. He becomes a follower of Martin Luther, so he's inspired by Martin Luther, and he helps lead the Reformation unit, or the Reformation unit. He helps lead Reformation movements in Switzerland, which helps Protestantism, or this new branch of Christianity, spread throughout Europe. So we're going from Germany down to Switzerland. Remember our map of Europe countries, and we're going to see it spread also into France through John Calvin. Now, John Calvin is inspired by Martin Luther, but he's not the same as Martin Luther. He writes what's called the Institutes of Christian Religion, and he talks about the idea of predestination, okay, where this is an idea you need to know, so write something down about this. Predestination is the idea that God has decided where you will be going once you die, either heaven or hell, before you are even born. Okay, so while you are in your mother's womb, God is deciding whether you are going to be elect and going to heaven, or not going to heaven and going to hell instead. Okay? Now, it's a kind of interesting idea, and it's kind of hard for us in the modern times to grapple with, because predestination is not something that many people believe in anymore. There are still some. But it's an idea that it matters what you do in life, because that should show whether you are going to heaven or not, but you can't always be sure. And so you have to try and live a righteous life, do good things, have a strong work ethic in order to prove that you are of the elect and going to heaven. But you can't always be sure. So you keep trying to do good things to make sure that you are part of the elect. Okay? Calvin is going to influence the Puritans who come across the Atlantic Ocean to America and found Plymouth Colony and Massachusetts Bay Colony. So they're very important, and it affects this strong work ethic affects the United States today, how we have a strong work ethic in the United States. Okay, getting your work done, watching the notes online. Now in class, we read part of the Institutes of Christian Religion. If you weren't there in class, make sure to download it from Blackboard and go through it, and we talked about how you can tell whether you are an elect or going to heaven or not. So that is John Calvin. Make sure you know what predestination means. Our third person involved with the Protestant Reformation is going to be Henry VIII, who is the King of England. He is of the Tudor family. Now, Henry VIII married a woman named Catherine of Aragon, and he and Catherine of Aragon had a daughter named Mary, who becomes Mary I of England, but Catherine of Aragon has trouble providing a son for Henry VIII, and Henry really wants a son because that is who is supposed to become the next king and take the throne and can carry on the Tudor name for all of times. So, that's not possible. Catherine of Aragon is having lots of miscarriages and stillborn babies. Some babies are born alive but don't last for more than a couple months after birth, and so Henry's getting really frustrated. Henry turns to the Pope and asks for a divorce. Can he divorce Catherine? But the Pope is going to refuse because, number one, the Pope is the nephew of Catherine of Aragon, so he's not going to let his aunt get divorced. And divorce is not allowed in the Catholic Church. Okay, you've got to have a really good reason for an annulment or a divorce. And he doesn't believe Henry and Catherine have a good enough excuse. And Catherine doesn't want a divorce. So what happens is Henry gets really mad, he has a temper, and he decides to withdraw England from the Catholic Church and start a new church. And he calls this church the Church of England. Okay? He has Parliament pass a series of laws that create this new Church of England. The law that you need to know is the Act of Supremacy. And this law, the Act of Supremacy, is creating Henry as the head of the church. So it dismisses the authority of the Pope, and the king is now essentially the Pope, put that in quotation marks, of the Church of England. Okay? So the crown that you see under the big no sign is the Pope's hat that he wears, and so they're getting rid of his authority. This means that England is no longer Catholic. They are now sometimes called Anglican, also known as the Church of England. Let me write that in there for you so you can know how to spell it. All right, so fun facts about Henry. Henry has 6 wives. His first wife at the top here is Catherine of Aragon. She gives him Mary, a daughter, can't give him a son, so they get divorced when Henry creates his nice little Church of England. He then marries a woman named Anne Boleyn, who is a Protestant. She already follows Martin Luther's teachings, and they get married, and Anne Boleyn kind of has a little bit of a wandering eye, so does Henry. Anne Boleyn gives him a daughter named Elizabeth, but can't have a son. Henry gets upset with her, claims she is adulterous or sleeping around with other men, and has her beheaded. So Anne Boleyn is beheaded. Henry then marries Jane Seymour, down here on the left, and this is the love of his life. Jane Seymour provides him with a son, but they didn't really have good medical things at that time, and so Jane Seymour dies from complications due to the birth. Edward is never a strong child, but Henry has a son. Now, kings should always have wives at that time, and so his ministers set him up with Anne of Cleves, down here at the bottom. They sign the papers. Henry has seen a portrait of her. He's never met her. He thinks the portrait, she looks kind of nice, and so he agrees to marry her. Anne of Cleves arrives in England, and Henry says she looks like a horse. So they get a divorce. So we have divorced, beheaded, and died. Number 4 is divorced. Then he meets Catherine Howard, a very young woman who also has a wandering eye and likes all of the young men in court. Henry accuses her of adultery, and she is beheaded. So number 5 is beheaded. Then he marries a woman named Catherine Parr. At this point in his life, Henry is very old, and he dies before Catherine Parr does. So we have divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Easy way to remember it. If you want, click the video on YouTube from the PowerPoint or find it on Blackboard and watch a little bit more fun about Henry. So when Henry dies, his son, Edward the Sixth, is going to become king. He is a very young kid. He only lasts until 15, when he dies of tuberculosis, the son of Jane Seymour, and he is continuing on the Anglican Church. When he dies, he doesn't have any kids, he never gets married. His eldest sister, Mary, is going to come along and become queen. Now, Mary has remained Catholic the entire time, okay, because her mother, Catherine of Aragon, who is Spanish, is Catholic. And so under Mary, England becomes Catholic again, okay? She becomes known as Bloody Mary because she hates Protestants and has a lot of people who are Protestant and refuse to go back to the Catholic Church killed. So lots of people lose their lives at this time in England over religion. Mary dies without having any children. She marries Philip II of Spain. It's not a happy marriage. They almost never see each other. And she dies a very unhappy, bitter woman, which means her younger sister, the middle child of Henry VIII, becomes queen. And she is Queen Elizabeth I, not to be confused with the current Queen Elizabeth II. Now, Queen Elizabeth is Protestant. She is a member of the Anglican Church, and so she is going to restore the Anglican Church and become the head of the Anglican Church in England, which you would think means that all of the Catholics are going to run and hide, which does happen. However, Elizabeth shows a lot of tolerance to the dissenters of Protestantism. So the people who remain Catholic, Elizabeth is going to be very nice to them, okay? As long as you practice in quiet and you're not disturbing our Church of England, you're okay. So, Henry, Edward, Mary, and then Elizabeth. And so they go from Catholic to Protestant to Protestant to Catholic and back to Protestant. So the English common people are very confused as to what religion they're supposed to be at this point. But after Elizabeth, England is going to remain Anglican, or the Church of England, up until this current day. Okay, so England is still Anglican. Now, in your packet, this didn't show up very well, but we have divisions of Christianity that you need to know. The first is going to be, we have the early Christian church, and then we have the East-West Schism, which is also called the Great Schism, where we get Eastern Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism. And then with the Reformation, we get Protestantism breaking off of Roman Catholicism. And then from Protestantism, we get 3 breaks. We get Lutheranism, followers of Martin Luther. We get Anglicanism, the English under the Church of England or Henry VIII. And we get Calvinism, or followers of Calvin. Okay? And then those break even further into religions that you've probably heard about today. Anglicanism breaks into Episcopalianism, Baptists, Methodists, Pentecostals. Calvinism breaks into Presbyterianism and the Reformed. Now, there are a couple things that you also need to know about their beliefs. Okay? And let me try and start this as an actual video so we can just delete these. Okay, so under leadership, under Lutheranism, instead of the Pope being the head of the church or a council of elders or the English monarch, we're going to have ministers lead congregations. In terms of salvation or who gets to heaven, in the Catholic Church you have faith and good works. Lutheranism and Anglicanism are faith alone, and Calvinism has God is predetermined who will be saved, which is also called predestination. Okay. In terms of the Bible or the Word of God, Roman Catholics believe that the Church and Bible traditions are the sources of revealed truth. Lutherans believe Bible is the sole source. Calvinists believe Bible is the sole source. Anglicans believe Bible is the sole source. Okay. In terms of the worship services, Catholics are going to say worship service is based on ritual. Lutherans say worship service focused on preaching and ritual. Calvinism is just focused on preaching, and Anglicanism is based on rituals and preaching. Now, interpretation of beliefs, the main difference is that in the Catholic Church, priests are the one that interpret the Bible, whereas in all three others, people are interpreting the Bible for themselves using tradition and reason in the Anglican Church. Okay, these are things you need to know about our churches and the differences between the four of them that form. That finishes our first part of the notes. We'll start looking at the Catholic or Counter-Reformation in our next set of notes.